Will J.K. Dobbins get a taste of revenge against his former team in the AFC West this weekend? And what are the keys to victory for Denver and what's shaping up to be a pretty pivotal matchup in the division for the Broncos? All things to come on today's rundown, but we have to begin with a shout out to our friends at Denver Regenerative Medicine. Guys, if weight loss has been a struggle, it's time for something real. At Denver Regenerative Medicine, they use full-strength GLP-1 medications with doctor oversight. You can start today with a free consultation and get real results for under $300 a month. Book now at denverregen.com. And we are looking at a pretty pivotal matchup in the AFC West this weekend for the Broncos and the Chargers, who both have different things at stake. One, the Broncos have to prevent themselves from getting too far behind the eight ball and failing to capitalize on two potential wins in a row before they get the Bengals in a primetime matchup, albeit without Joe Burrow, the Super Bowl champion Eagles after that, and then a much tougher slate throughout the middle and backstretch of the season than they experienced last year in 2024. And for the Chargers, man, you're sitting at 2-0 in the season and 2-0 in the AFC West, and you've got a chance to go to 3-0 and guarantee yourself a split with every other team in the division, giving you significant tiebreaker advantage and head-to-head advantage in that regard. This game, albeit in just week 3, has massive implications on the future race for the AFC West, how tight it may be, and which teams are going to be jockeying for pole position in that wild card spot. But the other interesting storyline here has to do with Broncos running back J.K. Dobbins and the fact that he came to the Broncos in a kind of a weird, unexpected way. The Chargers placed a rare tender on him in the offseason, kind of committing that they wanted him, but if another team offered him more, that they would be able to get a piece of it. And it really kind of left a sour taste, I think, especially initially in J.K. Dobbins' mouth, as he expressed when he came over here in June during minicamp. And it's put the Broncos in a position here where they have one of the bigger boomer bust candidates on the roster playing at their starting running back position. Because when J.K. Dobbins is healthy, he's a dog. He is one of the more explosive and productive running backs in the NFL. The problem is he just hasn't been able to stay healthy for an entire season for essentially his entire career as a professional. And he's now bounced around to 3 different teams since joining the NFL after coming out of Ohio State. And thus far for the Broncos, he looks okay. He's got 130 rushing yards, a touchdown, and clearly is going to be a factor that keys into the Broncos' success, not just in this game against LA on Sunday, but overall in the season, because bringing balance to the offense that was so sorely lacking last year when you had Javonte, Jaleel, and Audric Estime, that is going to be paramount if Denver is going to be able to build on what they formed last year with their 10-7 wildcard appearance and with Bo Nix in his rookie season, and prove that it was not an aberration and it was not a fluke, and that it is something real that can be built upon in order to make the Denver Broncos, in reality, become what Sean Payton has spoken them to be in this offseason as a legitimate Super Bowl contender headed up by Bo Nix, who is a top 4 or 5 quarterback in the very near future across the NFL. So is J.K. Dobbins going to get his revenge game against the Chargers? One would assume that that's definitely got to be on his mind, right? I may or may not have made a financial investment in that happening, so I certainly hope that it does. But if you ask J.K. Dobbins, as our own Andrew Mason and Cecil Lammy did yesterday, not so much. J.K. Dobbins said, it's in the past. I'm here. I'm a Bronco trying to do well this year. I'm trying to beat everything that I did last year for those guys. And yeah, they hit me with a tag, but it doesn't matter anymore. It's time to play ball. And so I respect and acknowledge what J.K. Dobbins is saying there. And I do believe that some of those emotions that were maybe more charged when he first spoke to the Broncos in June after minicamp or during the minicamp process, and basically said, like, hey, I'm a Bronco and those guys are going to have to face me twice a year now. And there was definitely a little more fire and energy and charge behind his words. I do think some of that has potentially subsided, but I don't think it's completely subsided. I absolutely think this is something that's on his mind. And I think that part of the human element of the game of football, beyond the officiating portion, which is just increasingly frustrating every single year, but the human element from the coaching perspective and the player perspective, the coaches who design the game plans and call the plays, and the players who go out there and execute them, I think there's going to be an inherent want to get J.K. Dobbins across the goal line against his former team in their house and kind of stick it to him, as we know Sean Payton has been want to do in previous situations, whether it was going for an onside kick to start a game or to start a half in the Super Bowl, or to run a 4th and 8 play call because you think you're smarter than everybody else and try to chuck a deep ball to Marvin Mims against the Titans and potentially put yourself in a bad situation. That's the human nature and the human element of football that I think doesn't go away entirely, as much as JK and others might try to tampen and push down that narrative. So is it going to be a revenge weekend for J.K. Dobbins? I want to lean toward yes. The Chargers defense has been pretty good, and even though they've had some injuries at the pass rusher department up front, they've got depth there at that position, and their front seven in particular has been solid, and it's helped their offense kind of play more aggressively and let things loose a little bit with Justin Herbert. So for a revenge game, what does that mean? Does he go for 100 plus and a couple of scores? Does he just have to get in the end zone, or how does the backfield share and split work? I think J.K. Dobbins, regardless of what he said to our own Cecil Lammey and Andrew Mason yesterday, regardless of what he says, this is shaping up to be a revenge game, I think, for J.K. Dobbins. And I think he will continue to get the volume of carries from Sean Payton and outpace R.J. Harvey enough to a significant enough degree that he's going to have the opportunity to do so. And I think he will be motivated for the human element and the human factor behind it to do so. And I think Sean Payton, from a play calling perspective, even though we know he's not a big fan of running the ball, and maybe if he thinks he's the smartest man in the room, he'll try to, call a play action and maybe use J.K. Dobbins as a decoy in a situation that might allow it to seem like he's going to get that revenge score or that opportunity and try to go elsewhere with it. But I ultimately think that J.K. Dobbins is poised to have a big game this weekend. And alongside R.J. Harvey, prove that not only is the Broncos backfield in a better spot, but the guy they left on the table in Omarion Hampton, like I said yesterday, when they drafted Jahdae Barron in the first round over Omarion Hampton, who went just a couple of picks later, the Broncos are not going to regret that decision. And J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey both, I think, are going to be a reason why. I see this as a continuation week for the offense and a significant bounce back week opportunity for the defense. So what are the keys to victory against the Chargers this weekend? And I think I've narrowed it down to 3. For one, the Broncos have to win the turnover margin. There are only 2 teams in the NFL who have a worse turnover margin than the Broncos at -3, and that's the Cleveland Browns and the Miami Dolphins, who somehow kept it a pretty close game with the Buffalo Bills last night in a way that many of us did not see coming until Tua Tagovailoa sealed their fate with a costly interception. This defense has to keep Justin Herbert in check. They have to get after the quarterback the way they did against Daniel Jones, but they have to seal the deal. And they have to avoid the frustrations that Nick Bonito was talking about after the game against the Colts last weekend, where it felt like they were getting in good positions. They were putting pressure on Daniel Jones, but he either had just enough time to make a move, or he was able to slip out, evade, buy time, either with his legs or push the pocket and move the ball downfield with his arm. They got close, but they didn't get home. If they're going to beat the Chargers, the Denver Broncos defense, whether it be pass rushers, the stout, the big uglies in the interior defensive line like Zach Allen and DJ Jones, or frankly, the secondary, they've got to get home. Because if they don't, and Justin Herbert is allowed to operate in a clean pocket, could be a long day for the Broncos. And the final one, they've got to cut down on the costly penalties. I don't think J.K. Dobbins spikes a football after a first down against his former team this weekend the way he did last weekend. The Adam Troutman face mask penalties, the holding penalties for pocket manipulation and moving the ball outside and putting the offensive line in a difficult spot to have to block for such extended periods of time. That has to go away. The Broncos are one of 10 teams with 120 penalty yards or more on the season. They are in the wrong side of an upper third category when it comes to penalty yardage in the NFL thus far. So if we're looking at this game from a macro perspective, I think there are three pretty clear keys to victory. One, the Broncos have to win the turnover margin. They're -3 right now. Only the Cleveland Browns and the Miami Dolphins are worse. Bo Nix is tied for the league lead in interceptions with 3. They have to take care of the football, both in the run game, which will be important, and the pass game. This defense has to get home against Justin Herbert. They have to keep him under pressure. They have to accumulate sacks and tackles in the backfield, which the Chargers in the run game have not been that strong so far this year. Both of their running backs combined have just over 100 yards of total production between Omari and Hampton and Najee Harris. And the Broncos have struggled to run the ball from a commitment standpoint and an execution standpoint through the first couple of weeks. To a certain degree, even if it looks better than last year, the Chargers are in the same boat. So if you can maintain that against the Chargers and keep their run game from popping off the way Jonathan Taylor was able to, and then get after Justin Herbert and keep him uncomfortable in a pocket to disrupt the flow of their offense, and a passing offense that has looked much more evolved with the Chargers, with Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh than we saw last year, that will be a significant key, and they have to cut down on the penalties. Obviously, winning in the trenches is something that leads to wins in the NFL and really at multiple levels of college football. And I think that the Broncos, who have one of the better rated pass protection grades as a unit so far through 2 weeks this season, they need to be able to get a push in the run game. And I think the J.K. Dobbins factor and potentially a little bit more usage for R.J. Harvey will do that. Win the turnover margin. Get after Justin Herbert and get home Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper and Zach Allen, and cut down on the silly and the unnecessary and the backbreaking penalties that legitimately kept points off of the board for the Broncos against Indianapolis and sometimes even against Tennessee. When you are one of 10 teams with over 120 penalty yards through 2 weeks of an NFL season, something is clearly going wrong there and needs to change. Because if it doesn't, the Chargers are going to be 3-0 for the first time in more than 2 decades. They haven't had a 3-0 start since 2002. And this 3-0 start will also come with a 3-0 record mark in the division in the AFC West, which the Broncos are hoping to still contend in as a wild card team and beyond. And losing to the Chargers because of the situation they've put themselves in will make it significantly more difficult to do so. We'll keep tabs on all of it coming for you this weekend. CU has a massive, what should be a win, but a massive opportunity to try to level the playing field at 2-2, get things back on track before a big stretch of Big 12 play against Wyoming. Air Force and Boise State. Talk about a fun game this weekend down in Colorado Springs. And CSU and UTSA, plenty of college football action across the state. And obviously our Denver Broncos hoping to get their first taste of AFC West play going in the right direction. We will keep tabs for you on all of it here at Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan. So turn your dial, plug your stream, do whatever you have to do to stay locked into the fellas for that. Check out DenverSports.com for the latest news and updates and information from the likes of Will Peterson, Jake Shapiro, Cecil Lammy, Andrew Mason, Trent Finnegan, James Marilat, and a host of other content creators there. And like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can catch shows like The Rundown here every day, weekdays at noon, Orange and Blue Today, weekdays at 5 p.m., Denver Sports Daily, getting you going in the morning with your morning headlines. And it's right around the corner. Mile High Hoops and Mile High Hockey, Avs and Nuggets seasons are getting close, getting rolling in the next month or so, and we will have specialized curated content for you for that as well. You know we keep it real, and we cover it all here on the Rundown, and we will do so on Monday for the next time.
I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put in the work.